Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host Chris Branch. This is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, marketer, and content creator wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one subject. And today we're going to talk about a subject that is quite concerning based on some research that we found, and that is data training and the bias it can create. Now, this is a subject I get quite a lot when I'm doing training sessions. The question is, how does ChatGPT, for example, get all of the information, and is there any bias to some of the answers? And I've always explained how they get the information, which we'll go into shortly. And when it comes to bias, I often say, really, it depends on the information it's fed. Because it's been fed millions and billions of data points, you tend to get a roughly fair, and I'll say that in quotes, fair opinion. But it also looks at the big publications, what they have to say. Now, the reason we're saying this, and the reason why the reason why what I'm getting to now, is because recently, what they're finding out is the big publications like The Guardian, the New York Times, the BBC, they are saying no to the likes of ChatGPT for them to crawl their data. Because of this, ChatGPT can't crawl their data, but at the same time, a lot of the right-wing publications are allowing them to crawl their data. Now, forget right wing or left wing. Essentially, what we're saying is one side of the argument is saying no for mainly copyright reasons, and the other side probably tactically have realized this and said yes. This is a challenge and a huge issue. So, Chris, what's your thoughts on all of this data training bias?
Yeah, it's a really concerning issue, isn't it? And we've seen some issues arising with what's called echo chambers inside of social media, essentially where the opinions that you have are just going to be echoed back to you and you don't get to see the opinions of other people. Now, that's a seriously worrying issue as well, because obviously then you start to believe that most people think like you, whereas actually the algorithm's looking to appease you. And similarly with this AI training data source material, it's like, well, if you don't understand the biases of the training data set, you're not being aware that you're being shown right-wing publications and, for the majority of things. Also, the previous way that it was trained using open source internet, like Reddit and Wikipedia, that was largely biased in the training data set, and many people are unaware of that. Now, one of the things I found really interesting with the New York Times is ChatGPT, the founder, Sam Altman, actually said, it's not our fault if we talk to a website which itself has copied the New York Times, but put that website under readability. So that's one of the issues with plagiarism that's happening right now, is many people are putting onto their blog the Times actual article, in which case OpenAI is not going to obviously be manually checking every website. They're just going to a website. Is it a yes? Is it a no? If it's a yes, pull the information. If it's a no, don't pull the information. But if it's a yes and that information contained, stuff that was itself trademarked, then how do you stop that?
Yeah,
Very difficult.
exactly. How do you stop it?
The only way that you could stop that, essentially, is by training the entire AI model on what it shouldn't have in it and then removing it, in which case you'd need to take the whole New York Times in order to feed it that information to take it out, which is, again, hazardous.
It's the challenge, or the publishers versus the tech companies, which you'll find in almost every industry, be it music industry, be it the gaming industry, be it the film industry. Now this, when it comes to, let's say, news publications, it's we own the rights. We want to make sure we get paid correctly, versus we want to give everyone a voice, or we want everyone to hear the information. And yes, we can compensate you, but the compensation is not going to be what it used to be. And it's that argument. The problem is, what I worry what I'm concerned about is that argument will go on for a long time.
Oh yeah,
That's
it
the
will.
thing. And during that time, are we going to be training the data to have some form of bias because of business, which is very, very, very dangerous game that we're playing here.
Mm. It is a dangerous game, and like all we can hope for is that we're able to um, actually align the AI with some of the issues that we face in society as being better than what we do. You know, for example, there is a lot of racism in the world and a lot of bias in gender and a lot of other things that we experience that an AI doesn't need to. But right now, we're giving it all of that. You know, it's just a raw version of society. It's not being taught that you can do better than this. You know,
Mm,
like, and it's therefore replicating all of this, the woeful stuff that we experience. And yet, I think the same is true with self-driving cars, right? Like, the only way we're going to accept self-driving cars as a society is when they have a lot less crashes than human beings, and not
yeah.
before that. You know, if they have the same amount of crashes, it's not good enough to be just as
Yeah.
good as us. They need to be much better than us. And I think
Much.
that's the same. Yeah, the same is true with AI.
But here's the danger when it comes to learning or when it comes to training, let's say the self-driving cars, there's going to have
Mm,
to be a lot of accidents for
of
them to
course.
learn from it. And that's the danger. And that's where it's, you
Mm,
know, you see the people who are putting it together, and really what they're saying is, well, if there's accidents, there's accidents. But really, what
mm,
they mean is, if as long as nobody I know doesn't get hurt, then it's fine. And that's what makes me feel very uncomfortable about, because you see this happen for almost any and everything that's been tested.
do you want
Um,
me to give you a great example of that?
Go on,
Mark Zuckerberg doesn't allow his own kids on Facebook.
there you go, there you
That's all
go.
you need to know with
Yeah,
that sort of stuff. It's like if you're creating the platform that you yourself wouldn't allow to your own kids, then you know it's damaging for society potentially. The
but I
same is
hope
true with
it's
like
kids under
Elon
12
going.
or under age.
Elon won't be the first one to go to Mars, but he'll certainly send 10,000 people there and make sure it goes all right and then get on that 400th trip, you know, when he knows it's safe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Once it's all been tested and all that's gone through, then yeah, then I'll go to
Exactly.
Mars.
Exactly.
But yeah, and going back to the data training for
Mm,
information,
mm,
that's what's going to happen. I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but that's the danger or the road that we're likely to go down if organizations keep it closed. Now, I understand why they're keeping it closed, because obviously that's their whole business, and then you're basically saying, let's build another business off the back of our hard work.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
So there needs to be some form of agreement and done quickly, because what we can't do is let something like this with this much power just go out
mhm,
of control, because then there's going to be it's not like AI is not going to be something where even though it's a tool, it's not going to be a tool where it's like some people will use it, some people won't. It's going to be a tool where almost everyone's going to use it. And the people who don't want to use it is almost going to be forced upon them, because like a mobile phone or social
mhm.
media, or like it's almost impossible to not be on social media, because it's very
Yeah,
difficult to
exactly.
function in a world without it,
Mm,
even just having WhatsApp. So that's what I can see happening with AI. It's going to be almost impossible to function in a world without some form of AI. Not yet, not 2024, 2025, but in 10 years'
mm.
time, it's going to be a completely different place.
I agree,
So,
and
yeah,
I feel like some of the issues we're experiencing right now with streaming platforms mirror this. You know, there's too many of them, and we don't want to have a subscription to all of them. And that could easily happen with all of these models. Like Google obviously owns Google, and they have their own Google AI, and they might not let anyone else talk to Google. And therefore,
yeah,
one of the world's largest sources of information just gets taken off the table. Now, we could have that
mhm,
with every platform, you know? You could have the
yeah,
LinkedIn AI, the Snapchat AI, the WhatsApp AI. Now, that's not as useful as one AI that can talk to all of your apps. But if they don't
yeah,
allow an AI to talk to your apps, then it's going to become less valuable. So, in a nutshell, yeah, you really just want to be careful about like where your information is coming from, the bias it may have inside of it, and just be aware that AIs may become more closed off in the future. Right now, it's the Wild West, as you experienced and you said, but essentially it could become much more regulated and stuff very soon.
Yeah, and also be aware of the clash between the media giants and the AI firms. It's going to
Yeah.
be a tug of war over digital influence.
And who owns what?